We picked this up for 300 bucks.
This is Yeti at Large, a channel focused on making the most out of what you got, no matter where you're at. Now that you're here, let's go.
So we love this Brooklyn bedding mattress. Now, we found a company that handles returns for Brooklyn bedding and tracked the history of this from manufacture to delivery to the customer who decided that they didn't like it and returned it almost immediately. Now, I checked this thing over with a fine-tooth comb, black light, smell, everything else. It's perfectly clean, perfectly brand new. Old mattress, used mattress, gross. But this thing for $300 retailed at $2,600. That being said, once we place this Brooklyn bedding mattress, which in and of itself is just under 14 inches tall, on the bed, the height of the bed now is 1 yard off the ground. Now, for perspective, I'm 6.5 feet tall. I can barely stand up in the bedroom, which is half the reason I bought this unit, but this needs to come down 7.5 inches, which is the exact amount of space we have in the frame underneath here. So let's get this all broken apart and get ready to cut that frame down. These get hot if you take them out fast. And I'm harshing your mellow, Alliance Assembly guy. Your back middle one, you missed. You swung and hit air. It's okay, bud. It happens to all of us. So as disassembly continues, this 1-inch flexible putty knife has been invaluable in removing these pieces without causing any more damage than you're gonna. Now this top row of staple lines that I pulled through, we're gonna trim this down so most of that will become scrap. We're gonna save a lot of it. So working on an RV in a park that may not necessarily want you working on it in the park, most stuff needs to stay indoors. You can see how we've stacked and organized everything in the exact order of removal so that as we work on it, it will go in the exact order of reinstall. So there's the fully stripped bed frame. It's held together by staples, which is sufficient. We may add a little vertical support here and one piece there with the trim that we take out if it fits. Because we don't have screws, we have fairly large staples holding this together, and we'd like to take the frame apart as a whole. We want to utilize some leverage and to be very careful. These are strong staples. They're making a good bond. We're going to replace these with a number 2 deck screw, but in the meantime, I'm using a regular flathead screwdriver, a heavy ball peen hammer, even though I'm not swinging it, I just want a little bit of mass, and a 1/4 inch slide extension. You'll see that these two are started, and I can use the slide to get a little bit of leverage. Look at this monster. That is one heck of a staple. I'll leave one partially attached to hold this together until everything else, and then I'll go back and take the last of each one of those so it's not flopping all over the place on me. The top frame is out. These are the risers that were on the slide portion. This is going to be the exact amount of the drop. 7 1/4, that's respectable. It'll bring it down from 36 down to 28 3/4. We can live with that. We need to reassemble some of the base, the staples pulled apart. Keep your workspace clean, especially in an RV you're living in. These two cables are designed to float when the slide floats back and forth. And you can see they're slightly different lengths. But man, it would sure be nice if they would track a little bit together just to protect them a little bit. So here is your zip tie moment. This is our slide cable chain drive. Here's the motor. If you have to do any work to this, it is my observation that you're going to have to do exactly what I've done and get the bed out of the way. Leave these alone. Don't fiddle with this stuff unless you're trained in it. Adjusting these slides is a lot like tuning a guitar. Takes a knowledgeable hand.
We're going to keep our focus on the bed frame and not do a lot of coverage on the table saw and scroll saw work that we did outdoors. My sisters came up from Phoenix. They have a fantastic woodworking shop and as such brought their table saws, nailers, and a lot of expertise. I was grateful for their help. You can see here that we have the bed frame cut down to size. We've reinforced it with almost 3 dozen number 2 deck screws. And here we're making the only modification now that the frame is down on the deck of the slide. We have to cut out a notch for the wiring to run through there. We'll drill it out and scroll saw it, and that should take care of that. Dogs make everything better. We're confirming our measurements and our alignment. We're going to take this outside and do our cuts out there. And again, respect the park that you're in. If they want you to minimize or avoid any work on your unit there, it'll be posted in the rules. Where we're at now, it seemed to be an unwritten rule to keep it modest. Here's the finished frame. It's fully installed, it's plumb, it's level, it's true, and it is very strong. Before we go any further, I felt it was very important to cycle test the slide to make sure that we just didn't miss anything. I put the screws holding the frame to the slide deck in the exact holes that the original one came out of. Nothing has changed on the lower contact points. We've just taken 7 1/4 inches of height out of the bed frame. Now we're going to focus on replacing the paneling, the trim, and rebuild the deck. So like I said, we're not going to focus too much on our table saw and our wood cutting work because there's really nothing much into that. But I will tell you, save these little pieces of trim that you have, take good care of them. This could make a handy repair somewhere if one of the corners gets dinged, so this will go in our toolkit. You'll notice with our risers that 7 1/4 where we lopped them off, notice there's a lot missing on one because we took chunks of this spare piece and we created additional vertical support around the edge of the frame that wasn't installed from the factory. Probably didn't need it, but doesn't matter. Here are the staples that were holding on the original paneling. When I took that putty knife, it just popped right out, and then when I went to reinstall the paneling, we just took a hammer and tapped those flush. Unlike these staples that we removed completely and then drove new screws to hold it nice and tight. One of the issues about a staple gun like this that its limitations is you have to have a 3-axis staple to get a real strong grip. X, Y, and Z. You can't do that on a butt joint like this, but you could drive 2 staples down and then 1 staple diagonal up to get a little tighter joint. Over time, these are going to start to creak with our 36 number 2 deck screws we've got in there. That ain't going to happen anymore. The last thing I'm going to say is this is this lovely paneling that they use for this material. It's fascinating how they put a fiberglass string in it to add strength and rigidity. It comes out occasionally. This is pretty good stuff, and then it's got a printed material on one side. You can see the holes for where the pistons that were holding the bed frame up, where I use this as a template to reinstall the new piston location. But one thing I want to talk about is the factory edge on the cut versus the cuts that we made. One of the ways you can protect this, if you have a 72 tooth fine cut blade, really lower that blade down and go nice and slow and run it through. You're not going to chop up the edge of that real rough. If you're in a small spot where you have a coarse blade and you don't have that luxury, take a piece of your trim and clamp it on face to face so that when you make your cut, the material, the printed material won't rip up real bad. It'll cut nice and tight. If you don't have fancy schmancy saws and you need to cut this stuff, I'm also here to tell you that a good sharp construction knife, box knife, and a straight edge, score it along this side, snap it like drywall, come back and cut the other side, will do the same thing. The stuff's pretty thin, pretty lightweight, but it's enough for the RV world. All right, so that's enough of that. Now, we're going to go through this. This is obviously trash. This was a rip that we did on the table saw to get a piece of the paneling down to size. I'm going to hang on to this in a storage tube that I have because it might make a great little piece of trim. I'm going to go through my leftovers here, pick out the real good stuff and save a bunch of it because this is invaluable for doing repairs and other stuff downrange. Who knows if I want to install some sort of electronic device and I need a faceplate for it, I can use this to make it. Let's go back inside. We've got everything pretty much reassembled at this point. So the question is, how many Gen Xers does it take to put a bed back together? Good grief. Like I said though, strong. Good on you, Alliance. You engineered a decent product for the application it was needed. Let's clean up our workspace, account for all of our tools to make sure we didn't lose a tool somewhere it could get wadded up in a mechanism, foreign object damage. And let's get ready to remake the bed for the big reveal. Moving this mattress is like moving a 75-pound piece of French toast. And seriously, manufacturers, why do you not put handles for a mattress on the ends? Why are they only on the sides? Keep a close eye on that light switch on the pedestal on the far side. You can measure it all day long, but until it's in place, I really want that light switch back, and boom.
If this doesn't look like much, that's the whole plan. This is supposed to be a normal bed. Before, it was 36 inches. Now, we're at 28.5, 29 inches. Granted, we lost a little storage space, but we still got our Brooklyn bedding, and we love it. And the struts do a great job, and I've still got some storage space. And like I said, I want a job at Alliance if I get paid by the staple. Yeti at large.